In our past and present society, we have failed to see that even from our Christian beginnings, we did not have a conventional family. Let me tell you a story to illustrate. A little over 50 years ago, a lady named Ramona had a daughter. Then, a few years later, she ended up having 3 more children. She had 2 daughters, Kelly and Veronica, and 2 sons, Juan and Paul. Ramona raised the children all on her own. Her husband chose to leave her when the children were young, making her both mother and father, shifting the relationships in the family. Ramona had left her biological family upon the birth of her first child, Veronica. Her family had ridiculed her so much for becoming pregnant out of wedlock. In fact, her mother would physically harm her as an attempt to induce a miscarriage. Along with the physical violence, she also endured emotional and verbal abuse, to the point where she chose to cut ties with the family. The situation was because of the harsh experiences she had with her family that she decided things would be different in the relationship with her children. Juan was the second oldest, followed by Kelly, then Paul. Ramona taught her children to do everything around the house. Washing dishes, sweeping, it did not matter the gender of the child. She would always tell them, les estoy enseñando para que el día que no esté aquí, sepan hacer todo lo posible. Lo hago porque los quiero muchísimo. In other words, I'm teaching you so that on the day that I am not here, you know how to do as much as possible. Also, because I love you very much. Ramona took the example of teaching her children from Jesus. He taught the disciples by examples, by faith, by educating them about God's will. Jesus prepared the disciples for life after his death because he didn't want them lost. He wanted them to be able to do as much as possible in his absence. Through all the pain that Ramona experienced, she also had many, many moments of joy with her children. Ramona had been resistant to attending church in her young years because of the ridicule her family had brought upon her while pregnant with Veronica. One day, Ramona met a nun named Teresita who told her that it was no one's business to judge her. In fact, Sister Teresita gave her a wallet card of the Virgen de Guadalupe. The nun asked Ramona to pray with La Virgencita as a fellow mother. If anybody understands, she will. Through this conversation, through this small act of kindness, Ramona found herself back in church. Slowly, she developed an immense love and belief in Jesus Christ, the son of a young teenage virgin. As time went on, Ramona made sure that her children knew about Diosito, Jesucito, y la Virgencita. She instilled in her children that even when we think we are alone, we are not. Jesucristo lived and died because he loved us so much. His life experiences on earth allowed him to experience the pains that we as humans experience, and so that we too can live. Earlier Christians underwent lots of anguish in the obstacles they faced. Being followers of Jesus came with a price for these folks. These folks were often expelled from society as they saw them practicing outside the norms. By all means, the early Christians broke with the standards and education of the time. As a result, they were pushed out of the roles they once held before converting. Moving even further, we can also recall King Herod's orders to kill all newborns, fearing what would happen if the infant Jesus was allowed to become an adult. About 30 years ago, Ramona's daughter Veronica was about to graduate from college when Ramona sadly passed away. Her siblings were finishing up elementary and middle school. Being involved with her campus ministry and her faith, Veronica reached out to God by praying. She prayed that she have the strength as the oldest child to teach as her mother taught. The death was a complicated thing as the four siblings had just celebrated their mother's birthday and just before Mother's Day. After Ramona's funeral, Veronica graduated from college, which was a bittersweet event, as her mother had been very encouraging, wanting a higher education for her children. Immediately after graduation, Veronica landed a job and assumed responsibility for her siblings by continuing to support the home they shared with her mother. The younger children still mourned their mother, but felt comfort in knowing that their older sister was now watching over them, continuing to teach them as their mother, Ramona, did. Veronica suffered in silence as her siblings grew older, attended college, and built romantic relationships. Veronica had never envisioned herself raising 3 grown kids. She had dreams of finding a good partner, a husband, to have children, to build a home. Veronica had never shared this with her siblings because she felt that she would hurt them and they may feel guilty. Veronica avoided the topic through the years. One could say that while she didn't get married, she did become a mother, and perhaps this is why she couldn't bring herself to hurt her children. Veronica, hiding her truth, reminds me of the early Christians who hid their pain. For all purposes, the early Christian church was unconventional in its practices. Some early Christians, witnessing the suffering that the outed Christians were enduring at the hands of the synagogue authorities, chose to remain in the closet and continue being Jews. Recently, Veronica's brother Juan went to see his sister and disclosed that he, as a gay man, wants to be mommy and daddy. She told him, "Juanito, I've always known that you would make a great parent." Juan interrupted playfully, "I see myself as both mom and dad." "Yes, and that's why I love you for who you are. You are beautiful for all that you are, What a notion of seeing an individual setting ground to allow his children to see him in a role outside the conventional father figure. Nonetheless, we think of Jesus, we often attribute his relationship with God as one between a father and a son. We could wonder why it is that we hear Jesus address God in such a fashion. But it is not for us to question. The relationship they have is a personal one, as any relationship between a parent and a child. For Jesus, God is Father. Juanito, you know that I am here for you. I have always protected and stood up for you against all those bullies you had growing up. As they continued to talk, they called the rest of the family to stop by and have a carne asada, barbecue. Around the table, they began recalling how they would gather around when their mother was alive. Ramona had encouraged them to sit around the table, to support each other, and share their stories. As they sat around the table, they all began to share their stories. When Juan claimed that he would love his children like his brother Paul and sister Kelly. One by one, they started to share. Kelly began by sharing that the reason she loved her children so much was that she had had a miscarriage. After she mourned her child, she realized that she would honor her child's memory by loving the ones in front of her every day. Her siblings looked at her with tears in their eyes as her husband just held her closer. Paul, second-guessing about sharing, decided if he were going to share, this was the moment for it. He confessed that he had contemplated with giving up his daughter when his wife left them. Although, when it came down to it, Paul thought about what their mother, Ramona, would have done. He grabbed onto her story about pushing forward, even when everything seemed stacked against you. Paul had become mother and father to his daughter, teaching her about life, about housework, about family, about relationships, and above all that she was loved. Paul added that he had had many days where he felt like giving up. Veronica, the parent who raised them into adulthood, cried with them as they shared. She got up and hugged them all and kissed them all. Her siblings could see how moved she was by their stories. They looked at her and told her, "Hermana, you know you are like our mother. You took the baton when Mommy passed. We love you." It was that trigger that had her share her sorrow. Veronica declared she too had a story to share. She had always had a dream of having a husband, children, and a home of her own. To her surprise, her siblings, whom she had raised as her children, didn't have a guilt trip as she imagined. They were thankful, and jokingly, as they often did with each other in the midst of serious moments, "Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad." The laughter came just as the food was ready. The family wiped their tears as they continued to laugh and pray. They thanked Jesucito for the food and prayed for guidance. They recognized that they are loved even amidst the pain of their young lives. They have reached the point where thinking they were alone, were never honestly left alone by the one who loved them, Jesus. They ate, they laughed, they played, they cried. They were one, an unconventional family. Looking at the parallels of the story you heard and the story of Jesus, we can conclude that Jesus played various roles for the disciples and those around him. Jesus was a parent to the disciples, teaching the ways of God by example, faith, and education. Jesus was a protector, as many parents are to their children. Jesus loved the disciples and those who sought of him, not because he had to love them, but because he felt a bond, an obligation to love them as they and we are gifted to Jesus through God. Jesus loved the people around him for who they were, like Mary Magdalene, an alleged prostitute, Matthew, as a tax collector who extorted money from travelers, not in a very favorable position. Many of the people around Jesus were seen as unfavorable by the religious sects that Mark labeled them as sinners. Jesus loved them all regardless of the reputation he picked up because of it. He loved them for who they were. If we are indeed to follow in faith, to be like Jesus, the parent, the brother, the teacher, we should not care how we are perceived for loving relationships with our families. Jesus passed on his education, love, care, faith, and compassion to the early Christians. They, in turn, have passed it down through the generations. When we set out to live as a loving parent like Jesus, we continue to allow our faith in him and the love for our ancestors to continue through us. And on to the children, we become a parent or parent-like figure. Amen.